Hi, I'm Colby Ratledge, and this is Crash Course U.S. History. And today we're going to talk about an era of extreme wealth, growth, and change, the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age, which ranged from around 1868 to 1901, was a time of great development, which influenced the lives of all, whether they were urban workers, entrepreneurs, or farmers. Let's get started. Gilded Age was first coined in 1873 when Mark Twain and Charles Warner released their satirical book, The Gilded Age, A Tale of Today. This book openly criticizes the corruption that occurred in American politics following the Civil War. Mark Twain wrote in his book, "Politicians and diapers must be changed often, and for the same reason." During this period, the abundances of raw materials, labor supply, capital, and markets led to an industrialized economy. Although American life seemed prosperous, there were a lot of underlying problems. The significant changes in the American economy clearly divided the haves, the aristocrats, businessmen, and have-nots, the working class. During the Gilded Age, American entrepreneurs profited from business-friendly government policies, including high tariffs, subsidies, and a policy of laissez-faire, which means let people do as they choose. This opposes interference of the federal government in economic activity and promotes free competition between businesses. However, the lack of regulation can hurt workers and consumers. Some businessmen, like Carnegie, use vertical integration to cut costs in all steps of production. Vertical integration involved controlling all the steps of production, including obtaining the raw materials, manufacturing, marketing, etc. Others, like Rockefeller and Vanderbilt, bought out the competition through horizontal integration. By using trusts and holding companies to evade regulation, these businessmen established monopolies on both products and jobs. Wealthy businessmen usually did not feel remorse for taking advantage of the working class, because they often mistrusted the common people to lead the American economy. Social Darwinism, first proposed by Herbert Spencer, was a societal theory that only the most fit could survive the society of the Gilded Age. They believed the struggle for survival inspired self-improvement. Social Darwinists, such as William Graham Sumner, believed that the government's policies were unfortunate but necessary. Social Darwinists favored laissez-faire economic policy because they believed government interference would only end the advancement of society and the economy. This attitude often led to the mistreatment of workers, whose low wages seemed especially unjust compared to the luxurious lives of industry tycoons. These industrialists were characterized as robber barons who crushed competitors, rigged markets, and corrupted the government. While most looked down on the industrialists of the period, some had a definite positive impact on the economy. Mr. Ratledge, I thought they were all evil lizard people who fed on the tears of poor people. Well, yeah, mostly, but many wealthy business owners actually made many large philanthropic donations to the community. Carnegie is known for his Gospel of Wealth article, in which he argued that wealthy people were morally obligated to give money back to society by stating, surplus wealth is a sacred trust, which its possessor is bound to administer in his lifetime for the good of the community. Carnegie contributed to his community by establishing a pension fund of over $10 million for teachers, building Carnegie Hall and over 2,000 public libraries, and supporting scientific research through the Carnegie Institute. By the end of his life, Carnegie had donated over 90% of his entire fortune, which inspired others to follow his example and give back. What's that? Is that country music? Do I smell apple pie? Hot dogs? I think it's time for a libertage. Not all Gilded Age businessmen had good intentions. Corruption ran rampant. Entrepreneurs were able to pay off legislators in order to get bills passed, or a blind eye to their corrupt business practices. It also helped them maintain control of their businesses by paying off the courts when unions went on strike. Like Tammany Hall in New York City arose during the Gilded Age. Political machines are political organizations that target certain groups of people as a campaign strategy. Immigrants were frequently targeted because of their need for political representation, as well as basic needs such as housing. In return for a vote, political machines provide adequate housing or a job in order to maintain their control in the municipal system. Immigrants often received help from another source, settlement houses. Jane Addams' Hull House provided education, jobs, and even childcare to immigrants. The rapid industrialization, along with the laissez-faire policies of the federal government, resulted in poor working conditions for industrial laborers. Businessmen were able to get away with forcing their employees to work in unsafe conditions for long hours with little pay. These poor conditions are best exemplified by the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, where working women were locked inside a building to prevent slacking off during work. This building caught fire and 146 women died either from the fire itself or from jumping out of the building in order to escape. Labor unions were legalized in 1842 with the decision of Commonwealth v. Hunt, and they began to rise in popularity. The Knights of Labor, founded by Terence Powderly in 1869, included workers of all skill levels and race, peaking at 750,000 members. They wanted an 8-hour workday, the end of child labor, safety regulations, and greenbacks, or unbacked paper currency. Unlike most other labor unions of this period, the Knights of Labor included women, so they also advocated for equal pay. After the Haymarket Square riot, during which a bomb was set off and 8 policemen died, the Knights of Labor were seen as radical and waned in popularity. This allowed the American Federation of Labor, or AFL, founded in 1886 by Samuel Gompers and his Gompsters, to become the dominant union. They sought to protect skilled workers from the increasing mechanization and oppose female and child labor. Labor unions was demonstrated through massive strikes during this period. In the case of the Great Railroad Strike of 1877, operators in 7 states went on strike after the Knights of Labor members were fired for attending a union meeting. President Hayes sent in federal troops to break it up. In the Homestead Strike of 1892, the National Guard was used to end the protest. During the 1894 Pullman Strike in Illinois, workers went on strike in response to 25 to 40% wage cut. The workers went on strike, and eventually the Pullman strike was broken up by federal troops ordered in by President Cleveland and left 34 dead. Because the federal government almost always sided with the business owners, progress was impossible for the unions. Real change didn't occur until Roosevelt in the beginning of the Progressive Era. The urban workers were not the only ones affected by this new economy. Discontent arose among farmers about high transport rates for their crops, the cost of new machinery, and bank lending policies. This drastically lowered the average farmer's income, which became barely enough to support a family. In some cases, the crop prices sunk so low and costs rose so high, farmers were unable to break even. Farmers' alliances emerged to represent the interests of the farmers against the interests of railroads, bankers, processors, corporations, and the politicians in league with such interests.
What's that? Is it time for the mystery document? The rules are simple. I get a piece of paper and I have to guess the document and the author, or else they dump a bucket of water on me.
Finance. We demand a national currency, safe, sound, and flexible, issued by the general government only. A full legal tender for all debts, public and private, and that without the use of banking corporations, a just, equitable, and efficient means of distribution direct to the people, at a tax not to exceed 2% per annum to be provided as set forth in the sub-treasury plan of the Farmers' Alliance. Or a better system, also by payments and discharge of its obligations for public improvements. 1. We demand free and unlimited coinage of silver and gold at the present legal ratio of 16 to 1.
2. We demand that the amount of circulating medium be speedily increased to not less than $50 per capita. 3. We demand a graduated income tax. 4. We believe that the money of the country should be kept as much as possible in the hands of the people, and hence we demand that all state and national revenues should be limited to the necessary expenses of the government, economically and honestly administered. We demand that the postal savings banks be established by the government for the safe deposit of the earnings of the people and to facilitate exchange. Transportation. Transportation being a means of exchange and a public necessity, the government should own and operate the railroads in the interest of the people. The telegraph and telephone, like the post office system, being a necessity for the transmission of news, should be owned and operated by the government in the interest of the people. Land. The land, including all the natural sources of wealth, is the heritage of the people and should not be monopolized for speculative purposes, and alien ownership of land should be prohibited. All land now held by railroads and other corporations in excess of their actual needs, and all lands now owned by aliens, should be reclaimed by the government and held for actual settlers only.
I'm going to go ahead and say it's the platform of the Populist Party. Apparently I got it right. They just wanted to dump water on me anyway.
The Gilded Age had an undeniable influence on our America. As T. Jackson Lears put it, patterns of tension that persist to the present, black and white, capital and labor, science and religion, republican empire, public good and private gain, can be traced to the era of corsets and spats. Even though the Gilded Age was terrible for the working class, America began to be seen as a global industrial power. America went from a country destroyed by a civil war to a thriving power with a flourishing economy. However, social and economical problems were still prevalent during this time. Laborers were still displeased with the unjust working conditions of payment and sought to reform the workplace. The discontent from the working class helped to spark the Progressive Era, a time of social and political reform. So could the Gilded Age's corrupt officials and unjust working conditions be overlooked to see this period in American history as a time of economic stimulation and giving back? Were these men really truly robber barons or captains of industry? I'm Colby Radledge, and thanks for watching this week's episode of Crash Course U.S. History.